Welcome to a new Draw My Life video. Christmas is celebrated a few days after the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, the darkest night. In the past, during this period, people would tell scary stories full of mystery in the light of the fire. Today, we're gonna recover this essence. So, please, turn off the light so you can enjoy this free version of the classic tale by M.R. James, Ghost Hearts. Here it is. It was September 1811, and little Stephen Elliott, who had just become an orphan, moved with his older cousin to Aswarby Hall, a big house in the British countryside. Something rather surprising, as people who lived nearby knew Abney was a grumpy scholar of old religions who hated human contact. Mr. Abney gladly welcomed his young cousin. He introduced him to Mrs. Bunch, his housekeeper, who didn't need long to become friends with the kid. She had been working at the house for 20 years, and she answered happily all the questions Stephen asked. One night, while they were sitting next to the fire, he asked Mrs. Bunch, "Is Mr. Abney a good man, and will he go to heaven?"
"Good?"
said the housekeeper.
"Master's as kind a soul as I've ever seen. Didn't he ever tell you of the little boy he took in out of the street? And the little girl as well?"
"No, do tell me about them, Mrs. Bunch."
"Well, the little girl, I don't seem to recollect so much about that. Mr. Abney brought her a long time ago. She lived here for 3 weeks. Then, one day during pre-dawn, she left before neither of us woke up. Nobody ever saw her again."
"And what about the little boy?" asked Stephen.
That poor boy. The master found him about 6 years ago. He was a foreigner, and he didn't have anybody in the world. He was here for a while, then he left on a morning, same as the girl, and we never heard of him again."
That night, Stephen had a weird dream. At the end of the corridor where his room was, there was an old disused bathroom. Through the glazed door, you could see an old bathtub with a window above it. Stephen dreamt that he was looking through the glazed door. The moon was shining through the window. Inside the bathtub, there was a thin little girl, enveloped in a shroud-like garment, with thin lips crooked into a faint and dreadful smile. Her hands pressed tightly over her heart. While Stephen was looking, the girl started moaning and moving her arms. The terror of the sight woke Stephen up. He realized he was standing on the corridor. With prominent courage, he went to the door and looked through it to check whether the figure of his dreams was there or not, but there was nobody. Stephen went back to bed. The following night, Mrs. Bunch was in the pantry while Stephen was playing nearby. Mr. Parks, the butler, came in running to say something to Mrs. Bunch, but he didn't see Stephen.
"If Mr. Abney wants wine, he may go and get it himself, Mrs. Bunch."
The butler stuttered.
"I'm not going down to the cellar. There is something there. I'd like to say it's rats, but I'm afraid it's something worse. I'd swear I heard them talking."
"Don't talk nonsense, Mr. Parker,"
Mrs. Bunch replied.
"You're going to scare the young master."
"What? Little Stephen?"
said Parks, realizing about the kid's presence for the first time.
"Stephen knows full well that I'm joking with you, Mrs. Bunch."
The expression on the butler's face, though, didn't say the same. It was the first day of spring, a windy day in March. During lunch, Mr. Abney told Stephen that they needed to talk about an important matter. He had to come up to his study around 11 at night. He told him not to mention it to anybody in the house. Stephen was happy about the idea of staying up until so late. That night, when he went up to his room, he took a quick look into the study. He saw his uncle having a glass of red wine while reading some sheets of paper and sprinkling some incense from a round silver box. At 10 o'clock, Stephen was standing at the open window of his bedroom, looking out over the landscape. The wind was blowing, bringing ghostly rumors along with it. When he went to shut the window, he saw 2 figures. It was a boy and a girl standing side by side, looking up at the windows. With a chill, Stephen recognized the girl in her dream. She was still, half smiling, with her hands clasped over her heart. The boy was more frightening, thin, with long hair and shabby clothes. He was raising his arms in the air with an appearance of longing and menace. Stephen was able to see that on the left side of his chest, at heart level, there opened a black hole. Stephen then heard a desolated and horrible cry. Though it wasn't exactly a voice, it was more of a feeling inside his brain. It felt like the cry of a hungry and lonely soul invading his brain. In a moment, the dreadful figures, without making any noise, had vanished. Terribly afraid, Stephen grabbed the candle and ran to Mr. Abney's studio. It was almost 11 o'clock. He knocked, with no answer. Moved by fear, Stephen pushed the door, but it was locked. He then heard Mr. Abney trying to scream, but his cry was choked in his throat. Why? Had he also seen the mysterious kids? Then, everything was quiet and the door yielded on its own. Stephen found Mr. Abney on his chair. His head was thrown back, his face with an expression of rage, fear, and horrible pain. On the left side of his chest, at heart level, he had a black and deep hole. His hands were clean, same as the long knife laying on the table. The window was open. After the appropriate investigation, the police came to the conclusion that some wild animal must have killed him. But when Elliot investigated his uncle's papers, he found the true reason of his death. Abney truly believed he could obtain eternal life by eating the hearts of 3 kids. In order to do so, he had to take them away from the victims while they were still alive, burn them, and mix them with wine. Stephen's heart was probably going to be the 3rd one in that macabre recipe. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, and if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!